guys, and welcome back to another command block tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be doing what you guys already saw in the preview, which is basically remaking the Thor that I made a long time ago. In case you're curious what my Thor from a long time ago looked like, it looked like this. Kind of boring. I think there's been a lot of improvements that I've done with commands since then. So, for this tutorial, we have 3 different abilities that we're going to be able to use. The first one is actually based on the Captain America shield that I made a while back. I basically made some changes to it though, and it's pretty cool because each one of these abilities actually comes with custom animations that I totally forgot to turn on. There we go. Now the one thing with this custom animation system is you have to manually turn it on each time you load up your game. But, like I said, each one of these comes with its own animations, and I actually use a mix of both first person and third person animations. So when I throw out this hammer, it's going to land, and then I'm actually going to summon it back. And I have a custom first person animation just for calling my hammer back to me. Basically, once it lands, you just sneak, your arm will stretch out, and the hammer will fly back to you. And of course, when you actually hit an enemy with it, it's going to be able to ricochet between enemies, catching them or striking them with lightning. Even the hammer that's on the ground is going to be hit with lightning. Even if there's enemies between you as you call it back, these guys are also going to get hit with lightning. So it's pretty fun, pretty effective weapon overall. And that's what we're going to be making today. Now, for those who are curious, the other 2 abilities that we have with this Thor hammer this is actually my favorite, is the slash along the grounds. Basically slash along the ground and it summons a bolt that travels along the grounds, and whenever it reaches either an enemy or just its end destination, it's going to blow up. And then finally, and this one is like largely based on some of the stuff you see in like Infinity War, is you basically jump and look straight up, you gather into the air, you have a bunch of lightning coming to you, and then you do a ground slam. And it's a bit harder to see on this white surface, but you can see there's some cool, sometimes it's weird over slabs. There's a huge radius of sparks that enter the ground whenever you jump. There we go. So it covers a huge area and actually does waves, does different damage amounts depending on how close an enemy is. It can actually one-shot like a Ravager or an Iron Golem if you're within 3 blocks of the landing center. But yeah, so we have a couple different abilities that you're going to be able to do, but I don't want to spend any more time wasting your time. We're going to get into the commands. Now, like I said, today we're not doing all 3 of them, as there's just too many commands for that. Today we're just going to be doing the hammer toss, which is actually probably the largest of these 3, as it utilizes both the custom animations that you see over here, and it will utilize a lot of these commands. So this tower, this section, and this section are both related to the hammer toss. This is for the ground slash, and then this is for the big slam right here. So, like I said, the hammer is also unique because it uses both FMBEs and custom animations, although it only has a first-person animation for this one. Alright, so, a couple of things first is that if you've done custom animations for, if you've done custom animations already for your world, you won't need to repeat the custom animations. If you've done FMBE stuff, you won't need to repeat the FMBE stuff, but I'm going to assume that you've done neither of these things. So, one of the first things that you're going to have to do is make 3 different scoreboards. So, the first scoreboard is going to be, so just type this into chat, scoreboard objectives, add. The first one you're going to need is slam dummy. Then you're going to need, actually I lied, you're going to need 4. Sneak dummy. Then you're going to need slash dummy. And then you're going to need S timer dummy, and I think there might actually be one more that I'm forgetting. Yeah, just timer. So you need to type all 5 of those in. Additionally, you're going to need these 3 commands here. This adds on a 50 tick delay, it adds a slash score of 0. That just makes sure that the player has the score of slash, slam, and anim, which is another one that I forgot to do. There's a lot of scoreboards. Type those into chat, make sure all those scoreboards exist. Make sure these 3 are setting them to 0. This makes it so, because we're adding 0, it makes sure the player has a number without actually changing it based on what later commands do. So that's just to set up the scoreboards. Let's get into what are the base things that we need. I'm going to start with the FMBEs first, and the animations are going to be the very last thing that we do, because the animations are completely optional, whereas the FMBE stuff isn't. So, we have a couple of animations that we're going to be playing on the Fox. These animations are just kind of copy and paste. I should be able to have these in the description. More than likely, I will not be able to fit all the animations for the custom animations and the FMBEs. FMBEs are block entities for those new to my channel. And more than likely, I won't be able to fit both of these into the description because it's literally too big. So if you need to, pause, type these out manually, and if I can't fit it, I'm going to try to put it all in the comment section. So the rest of these here are just base configurations that we have. Anything with the tag block, by the way, is an FMBE, in case you're curious. These are just basically effects that we give it. So it doesn't catch on fire, it doesn't die up, whatever. And this just makes it not have wither. I'm surprised I have that. So that's just going to make it so anything that has the tag block is going to instantly become an FMBE. That means it's going to have just the base entity or FMBE mechanics. So now we're going to get into what is actually happening as far as the throw. And I apologize, my physical organization is not the best. I'm going to try to present this in what will hopefully be the most helpful way to demonstrate it. Oh, so a couple other things, we do have these stop sounds running always, just to make so you don't hear the foxes as much. Okay. And we'll get to that in a second. So what's going to actually happen is basically it's going to check, does the player have the tag Thor, and that's something you will need for all three of these creations, and is there an item on the ground in front of them named Mace? If that's the case, it's going to kill the item, and it's going to summon a fox, and then it's going to summon a boat. So let's look here. Executing anything that is the tag Thor, if there's an item within 2 blocks named Mace, summon a fox basically wherever the player is, copying their rotation, and then name it Axe T. Then give it invisibility right away. Then summon a boat 146.3 blocks into the air. Once again, copying the player's rotation. Because if you guys don't know already, most objects, most entities can't store up and down Y data, except boats can. So let's say I want to throw it from up here and I want to actually angle it downwards. Using a boat allows me to actually angle it downwards. That's why we're using the boat for this. After we summon the boat, we're going to give it the tag for Axe Boat. Then we're going to play this little sound for the actual effect of throwing it. Then we're going to kill the item named Mace. And then we are going to kill, basically this is the boat dying if the axe is no longer in the air or if it hits something. See, it has the tag hit here, because once it hits something, it's either going to fall into the ground and get stuck, or it's going to ricochet around, which we no longer need the boat for either of those things. So once the axe either dies or hits something, it's going to kill the boat. So these are going to be some of the teleporting that we have going on right here. So first of all, we are going to be using the timer basically to see how long the axe goes for, because if I just sort of throw this out and it doesn't hit anything, after a certain amount of time it is just going to stop. That way it doesn't go into the void, because we wouldn't want that. So there is a timer to make sure it doesn't go too far if you accidentally throw it too far. So what's it doing here? Basically it's making it so that as the boat's traveling along, as long as the timer doesn't get too high, it's going to teleport the actual fox, the axe, the one that you can visually see, below it. And of course, we got to give the fox a mace in its main hand. Now, you might be wondering, why am I calling the fox axe if I'm using a mace? That's because partway through I was originally going to use an iron axe, then I switched to the mace partway through because of some streamer requests. And I didn't feel like switching the tags because it felt not really necessary. Now, this tower looks very intimidating, it's very tall. However, it's actually repeating the same set of commands 4 times over. This just allows the axe to travel faster and not accidentally miss mobs by passing through it or skipping over it. So what are we doing here? Basically, it's going to teleport the axe boat 0.4 blocks forward. Then it's going to check at the axe. If there is an entity that it collides with, that's with the dx equals 0, that's not a block, so it's not another FMBE, it's not Thor, it's not itself, and it doesn't have the S timer of 0, which I'll explain that in a second, it's going to get the tag hit. This is going to do a couple different things that you're going to see in a second, but that's going to let the game basically know that, hey, this has hit something, now we're going to change up the mechanics. The S timer right here is basically for if it hits something, there's a bit of a cooldown. Because we want it to be able to ricochet between targets, there's actually a cooldown before it can hit 2 targets. So what's going to happen is, as soon as it hits this pillager, that pillager is going to go on cooldown, so it's going to target the nearest entity that's not on cooldown, which is this guy. That's going to give it the ricochet. Now, if I were to actually give me some, let's do some higher health targets who can actually survive a couple of these hits, you will probably see that it can ricochet a couple of times between the same target, if it's a higher health target. Actually, in that case it did. But, trust me, it actually can if you have enough targets. Whoops. I missed. It is going to ricochet multiple times, it's just kind of slightly going out of range. That's all. Ignore the really loud lightning. I'll probably turn that down in post, but it's really loud on my end. So that's what the S timer is for. Okay, the next thing that we're going to be doing is we're just checking at the axe tag. Unless there's an entity within 3 blocks, so unless there's already a lightning bolt within 3 blocks, it's going to summon a lightning bolt. This makes it so it's commonly summoning lightning bolts, but it's not spamming lightning bolts if there's already one on the ground. Then, of course, we're going to do the damage. So basically, as this axe is traveling around, whatever it's hitting, as long as it meets all these requirements that we have up here, it's going to deal 20 entity attack damage. And it's going to have it to be sourced from the nearest Thor player. So this is going to give it knockback, and it's going to count as a player kill. Now, of course, you can change this 20 to be higher or lower, whatever fits your needs. If you want the hammer to do more damage, make it higher. If you want it to do less damage, make this number lower. Nothing too complicated there. And then we're going to give it the cooldown. Basically, we're looking at the axe, and it's going to set anything that it hits to have an S timer of 10. Then we're going to repeat. So once again, we're teleporting the boat, doing the hit tag, doing the lightning bolt that we have here, and doing the damage. Doing the cooldown. And once again, teleport the boat. Oops. Run the hit tag. Lightning tag. Damage. Cooldown. And guess what? One more time. Teleport the boat. Hit tag. Lightning. Entity damage. And cooldown. So ideally, you can probably just make your first 5 commands and then use the clone command, or more than likely if you have a keyboard you can just do the special pick block, which is what I would prefer. But even still, if you guys are on console, you can probably just make the first 5 commands and then literally use the clone command, clone it 5 times, and adjust it as necessary. This would also be a good time to note that if you guys want access to the structure files for any of my projects, consider becoming... Oh, okay. Oh, there goes my third person. Consider becoming a channel member, as I will have all these structure files completely for free available through my Discord for channel members. Additionally, if this video hits 1,000 likes, I will release a world file, not this world file, this is a marketplace map, but I will release a different world file that actually has these commands in it if this video or any of the Thor videos hits 1,000 likes. Alright, now we're going to get into, well, this is what happens before it hits something. Can you please get out of here? Alright, so that's what happens when it hasn't hit something. This is what's going to happen when it has hit something. Basically, so this is checking, does it have the tag hit? Yes. Does it not have the tag stuck? Basically, when it lands in the ground, it's going to get the tag stuck. That is what's basically going to make it so, okay, it's on the ground, it's ready to be called back to the player if the player sneaks. So if that's the case, it's going to check, is there any entities nearby with an S timer of 0 that, once again, aren't Thor or Block, whatever. If so, it's going to start teleporting towards those entities. Then it's also going to basically strike things with lightning, because why not? Oops. Same deal, it's going to be doing the same type of damage. And it's also going to actually have a slightly longer S cooldown of 15 if it's hitting on a ricochet. And then we repeat the same set of commands. This is just teleporting it again. This is just the lightning bolt again. Cooldown again. Damage again. So that's just the same set twice, whereas this is like 5 times that's repeated to make the hammer throw faster. Okay, so we have the base mechanics of the throw and the ricochet. Let's start talking about the S timer. This makes it so anything that's not a block, boat, item, XP orb, or an armor stand is going to have an S timer of 0, or it's going to start off with 0. If it's 1 or higher, it's going to slowly remove its S timer on a 4-tick delay. And this is going to make it so that if the axe has the tag hit, if there's no target for it to bounce between, then it's going to get the tag stuck, and that's when it's going to fall into the ground. Now, it's also going to get a special tag if it gets hit. So for stuck anim, this just makes it so we can either have it be stuck in the ground or moving back towards the player and have different animations for both, which you'll see in a second. Basically, this is checking, is there not a player sneaking nearby whenever it gets stuck? And if there is a player sneaking near the stuck hammer, it's going to remove that tag because it's going to be playing the spinning animation. So you can see, like, this is the moving animation, lands in the ground, that's the stuck animation. But as soon as I call it back, let me land here real quick. As soon as I call it back, it's going to go back to the spinning animation. Even though technically its behavior is being stuck, it's in the spinning or moving animation. Can you? Guys, why are you in my commands? Thank you. Alright. So that's the stack animations right here. Now we're going to be doing the actual teleports. Basically, this is going to be checking, first of all, does the axe have a timer score of 50 or higher, in which case give it the tag hits. I showed you that earlier. If it travels far enough, it's just going to die in the air, so it doesn't go too far. Then, if that's the case, basically we're checking if it has the tag hit, give it the tag stuck if there's no targets nearby. And if it has the tag hit, basically if the player is sneaking after the hammer's hit something, it's going to start teleporting back toward the player. And this is also basically just going to make it so that unless it hits, or this is so if it hits a block that's not a light block or an air block, it's going to get the tag hit. That way when it hits a block, it gets stuck, as you would expect. And then while it's stuck on the ground, this is going to make it teleport slightly upwards. This way, if it gets stuck below a block, it's just going to go to the top of the block. But then we have 2 of these commands that are going to make it go negative direction. Like I said, this just makes it so if it somehow gets caught in the side of a block like that, it's going to raise to the top. But if it dies like in the air, like what we showed earlier, it's just going to fall to the ground. That's what those 3 commands do. Alright, so that brings us to these sets of commands, which is actually most of it. This is, as far as I'm concerned, the behavioral part. If you've done this, it should pretty much all be functioning for you guys. Now we're going to get into the more visual part. So we've already discussed these 2 chains here, which are the base FMBE stuff. But we do have a couple of other things that we are going to need to do in order to make sure that we have the visuals that we want, as well as to make sure that when you bring the axe back to you, it's going to have the functionality that you want. So first of all, we are just going to make sure that the tag block is given to axe_t, so that's the actual axe. Make sure it's an FMBE, and give it the tag axe_t because sometimes I'll type tag instead of name, so I just give it the same tag as the name so I don't have that typo. Okay, so the other thing that we're going to be doing is giving a timer to the axe_t. We already talked about that. Then if the timer hits 20 or higher, it's going to, wait. Yes, sorry, I just need to double check something. Basically, once the timer runs out, we're actually going to replace the item with air, so that way it's less visible when you kill it. And when the timer hits 20 or higher, we're going to give the nearest Thor player the mace. If it is 20 or higher, this just basically means that it's back at the player, is when the timer is 20 or higher. It is going to teleport the player back to here. Make sure these coordinates aren't exactly the same as mine. It should be the coordinates of this command block right here, because it's going to kill it at the command thing, so it's not nearly as loud for when you pick up the axe. So just make sure the coordinates you see here are wherever the actual command block is. Then we're just going to kill any axe T that's within 2 blocks. And we're going to give the axe boat a timer adding to 1, and kill it if it hits 50 or higher. Where do these stop sounds? This is the collection system right here. So now we're going to get into the animations. So first of all, this is what it looks like if it is moving. Yes, sorry. This is what it looks like if the thing is moving. It's going to have this thing right here, which is basically going to allow it to spin. And when it gets stuck, it's going to have this, which is basically just going to have it be upright, sticking down in the ground. Now, you might be wondering, how are we controlling which one it's doing? Basically, if the playanimation stuck anim, so if it does not have the stuck anim tag, it's going to have this set of variables that's basically going to make it so that its variable score is set to 0. However, if it does have the tag stuck anim, its variable score is going to be set to 1. Now, I have not done a full playanimation tutorial yet, and that's on purpose. I want to get to it at some point, but I want to make sure that I can explain it well before I get to that point. So for the time being, if that doesn't make sense, just trust me, it works. So that's basically it as far as the animations are concerned for the actual throwing of the hammer. However, we still have the custom animations that, if you want it, that basically make it so your arm, whenever you're calling it, actually reaches out like you're calling Mjolnir back to you. Once again, if you don't care about that, the rest of this is completely optional. Everything else that you've seen so far should work without the following commands that we're about to get into. Oh, that poor lay is stuck. I got it out. Alright, we can ignore these. These are for the ground slam. We will need these, however. Now, I've already showed these. This is the custom animation system made by Antec. And you might be looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, I have no idea what is actually happening in any of these commands. I'm actually at the point where I am starting to get where I do understand what's going on in these commands, which I'm very happy about, because that means I can do a lot more with these custom animations. And I will be doing more with them in the future projects, just because I think they're awesome. But I will always design them in such a way that they are pretty much optional for anyone who wants to engage with them. Once again, I'm going to try to have all of these animations in the description. That might not all fit. If that's the case, then I will probably pin a comment with the rest of the animations that I couldn't fit in the description. Although, quite frankly, at this point, it might just be better to make a Word document. Okay, so that's the base setup. You basically run all of these on the player, and that is going to make it so that we're able to control with a very, very high level of control what is actually happening with the player. So I'm not going to show you all of the animations because we actually don't need all of them. In fact, you guys aren't even supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here. Let me just turn them off for now. Oops. So these are the two animations that we're going to be using for this command right here. This is the normal animation and the call animation. Wait. And it's one of these. Oh yeah, sorry. We're going to be using both of these. This one, and these two right here. And probably these two as well. Yes. Sorry about that. So, what's actually happening is, let me go here and set the anim score to be visible on the side of the screen. So there's basically three things that actually have to happen. We have to, number one, control through scoreboards when the player is supposed to be in each animation. Number two, control through Molang variables when the player is supposed to be in each animation. And then number three, define what each animation is actually supposed to look like. So this tower right here is the one that is actually going to control the Molang. This is going to make it so that the Molang variable matches the scoreboard variable. This right here is going to control when it should have or when it shouldn't have a specific scoreboard. This right here is what actually defines what animations look like. So we're going to start with these ones. First of all, this is the call. So if the player already has an animation score of 0, but they are sneaking and there is an axe nearby that has been hit, we're going to set the player's anim score to 1. This is going to allow the player to reach out their arm. However, we're going to be looking at the player and basically checking if the player is not sneaking and their anim score is not already 0, their slash is 0, and their slam is 0, meaning they're not doing the slash attack or the slam attack, set their anim score to 0. This basically just resets the player back to normal whenever they're not utilizing one of these attacks over here. Okay. Now we're going to start looking at the Molang. We don't need the rest of this chain for this tutorial, so I'm just going to show you these two. So basically, if the player's anim score equals 0, we're going to set their v.anim score to 0 with this Molang query right here. And similarly, if their anim score up here is 1, set their Molang anim score to 1. Now that their Molang score is set, we can actually go over here and define what these animations should look like. So, this is a lot. Basically, this more or less makes the player look normal. I have the animation score of 0 right now, and as you can see, my animation is pretty much normal in the third person. It's a little bit off in the first person. That's perhaps something that I need to fix at some point, but, you know, it's pretty much normal, especially when you're holding an item, and it's normal in third person. This is just simply the normal animation. Now we do have a little bit of math, making it so that when we are switching animations, it smoothly goes back to normal rather than like snapping back instantly to normal, but this is essentially what it should look like. For the most part, all the variables here are going to be 0. Any numbers that you do see here are just the smoothing out the animation. Next up, we have the callback animation. Now, this one's actually going to be pretty similar, and it is going to be based on your first-person nature. You'll notice that when I call back this thing in first person, my arm goes way up, goes really high. Normally, that would look super weird. In this case, it actually doesn't really move it up at all. It just kind of moves it forward a little bit. That's because we're actually making variables based on it being in first person or not. But essentially, all this is doing is controlling it so that the arm is doing something special, but you can only see it in first person, and that's what makes it rise up into the air like it's trying to call the hammer back to itself. So, that is pretty much it for the hammer toss. Now, I'm thinking that's probably going to end up being the longest of these 3 related tutorials, so do let me know which of the other 2 you're most excited for, whether you guys want to see this ground slam, or are you excited to see this slash attack? I want to see explode. Either way, do let me know. I think they're both really cool. I really like the custom animations, particles, sounds, all that stuff that goes into it, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. Obviously, it is a little bit more complex than the last time I made Thor, and I have been diving into more and more complex creations as of late, so I hope you guys are enjoying them. I hope you guys have found them to be worthwhile. Anyways, feel free to give a like, give a subscribe, help me out in any way you can as far as the channel is concerned. I do want to reiterate that structure files are available to all of my channel members, so structure files will be available to them. Additionally, if any of these Thor tutorials hit 1,000 likes, I will release a world download that has all of these commands already in it. So, thank you so much for coming. Hope you enjoyed, and join the Discord. Link will be in the description if you need help.